Hey everybody, welcome to Bura. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about two different things. First, Palantir is buying 50 million gold bars, and Toyota is dropping production 40% because of a chip shortage. Alright, welcome back. First of this video, I want to make sure that you like and subscribe. The more likes and subscribes you get, the more content we can make. Number one reason why you subscribe to this amazing channel is to get into the money-making trends before they go mainstream. Alright, so there are two stories I really want to talk about today, and I'm going to tie them together, and you need to understand what's going on here. So first things first, there's a company called Palantir, which is a Peter Thiel-backed kind of data company. And if you've heard of that name before, it's probably because it's been on Wall Street Bets. And because it was on Wall Street Bets, it got a lot of attention as a meme stock. But the thing about Palantir is that it purchased $50 million worth of gold bars. Now, if you've been a fan of this channel, I've told you to purchase gold multiple times, and you should definitely own at least 1 gold ounce. So generally, you should have 1 gold ounce, 100 ounces of silver, preferably 1 Bitcoin, and a few Ethereum. Maybe some Cardano too. Definitely some Cardano, and I'm going to talk about that in another video. But nevertheless, you should have at least some gold. And the lowest amount of gold you should have is at least 1 ounce. It can be a coin or it can be a little wafer. Now, if you've never purchased gold before, the thing is that the more gold you purchase, the better deal you get on the per ounce basis. And the reason for this is that gold is sold at a premium to pay for the mining, the shipping and storage and all that other stuff. So Palantir bought 50 million gold bricks, and those are pretty big blocks and they're quite expensive. And why would a company do this? Well, basically, if you have a bunch of cash on hand, what are you going to do with it? Well, you can put it into stocks, you can invest it, you can buy some crypto with it, which is very popular with Bitcoin these days, or you can go purchase some gold. Now, when you purchase gold, you are basically banking for a black swan event. And if you don't know what a black swan event is, it's basically something like a stock market crash or something that is completely out of left field that will tank the market. And what would a black swan event be? Well, a pandemic might be one of them, an asteroid hitting, solar flare, or just something in the market here. And the reason why he would go to gold is because gold, again, has a 5,000-year track record, and there are other stores of value as well, but the best one is gold, maybe silver, because gold and silver are finite on this planet, and if it's finite, then it's gonna be more valuable in the era of central bank money printing. Now, gold is somewhat of an inflation hedge, but it's really more of a calamity hedge. So maybe it's perhaps the founder of Palantir being a little bit crazy, but they're banking on a black swan event happening, in which case gold can go through the roof. Now, I don't know if this is actually going to happen. Literally nobody does, but $50 million worth of gold bricks is quite a feat. So unlike Bitcoin, buying $50 million in bricks of gold is actually quite hard to do. You have to, 1, purchase it, 2, source it, and 3, ship it to a vault, and then 4, you have to actually contain that gold in a vault. Now, gold is probably the hardest form of money. And the thing is that if you wanted to buy $50 million worth of Bitcoin, you can pretty much do it almost instantaneously. So gold, believe it or not, isn't that rare on the planet. The problem is that it is kind of hard to get at, and that's really what makes it valuable. It is finite. It's not necessarily rare, but getting it out of the ground and refining it is really difficult. Silver also has that issue. If you don't know how silver is mined, basically they mine it in a bunch of mines, and a lot of the silver production is a byproduct of a copper mine or some other kind of mine. The silver, what happens is you have a big bunch of rocks, and then they kind of shake it out into a smaller bunch of rocks, and then they shake it out into a smaller bunch of rocks, and then they shake it out again. And this is literally how silver is mined. And then what happens is that eventually it comes into a very fine paste, and then out of that comes the silver. It's a very intensive process. Now, gold and silver is always going to be the hardest form of money, but now that Bitcoin exists and hopefully there's no solar flare, it's also a contender to being hard money because it's backed up by the math of the blockchain. So let's take a look at the second story. Toyota is reportedly making 40% less cars due to a chip shortage. Now, If you've been a fan of this channel, I've talked a lot about making societies too complex, and if they become too complex, then they can falter. And we know this from the Bronze Age collapse. If you haven't checked out Jonathan Snow talk about this, I highly recommend that you do. It's about an hour long and it is definitely worth every minute. But if I were to sum up that video, is that complex civilizations need to be simpler because complex machines tend to fall apart more easily than simple machines. And we've built way too much of our infrastructure around chips, and it makes sense. Everything you have has a chip. In fact, I have a light right there and it might even have some kind of chip. Now, one of the things we really need to be able to do is standardize a very common chip that pretty much any device can use other than your top-end devices. So if you, let's say, need to have a car or a coffee maker or something that requires a chip, we need to be able to input raw materials and output a chip. And the reason why we need to do that is because if we can just get the raw materials to the chip, then we can actually start producing chips. Now, if this were to happen, the chips would be incredibly bad, but that would be the baseline for what we need to do. And what I mean by that is that that is the absolute base amount of computing power that you would need to put in your cars or coffee makers or whatever it is you need to do. And if we could do that and make it standard, then our civilization would become a lot less risky. Now, of course, if you've ever seen how computer chips are made, specifically the ones in your iPhone or computer, it's a very intensive process. What we need to do is find a simple way to get these out there. Now, it's probably way harder than I'm thinking about it, but it's something that we should really solve. We really need to get the lowest common denominator of chip that can do pretty much 90% of the tasks that we're looking to do. And if we can do that, and have this machine be, let's say, sit on a table, then that would be really good. What that would do is make the chip production local so that in theory you can have local production so that society doesn't really fall apart. Because really our supply chain is concentrated into Asia, which is not necessarily good, especially if you live in an area where there's little or no production, like North America. So this is really a topic for a different video, but we really need to decomplexify civilization. I don't even know if decomplexify is a word, but you know what I mean. So what does Palantir's gold production and Toyota's chip shortage have in common? Well, it basically means inflation, and inflation could be a calamity. So what inflation basically means is that the goods and services that you're buying are becoming more expensive. And if Toyota is reducing the amount of cars that they are making by 40%, that means there's going to be less supply. And if the demand stays the same, then the price will go up because there's less supply. And this is a huge problem. Because if life all of a sudden starts to get more expensive, then less money will start to circulate in the economy. And this is not very good. We had something similar in the 1970s where inflation was a really big issue. And this is exactly what should happen after a pandemic, because usually after pandemics, inflation tends to go up. So be prepared for inflation. Now, the best ways you can protect yourself against inflation is to buy finite assets. Real estate, crypto, and gold and silver. Anything that's finite, that is that there is a specific amount on, then I would highly recommend that you buy it. The other thing that you need to buy is things that you need in your life, like a car or anything that you think that you need in your life that you cannot do without. If you cannot do without these items, then you absolutely need to get them. And you do want to spend a little bit of extra money to make sure that they're quality. If you need to buy a fridge, then go buy a very nice quality fridge, because you definitely need that. If you need a car, go buy yourself a good car. Do not cheap out on it, because it might be way more expensive in the future. Now here's the thing, I talk a lot about doom and gloom, but at the end of the day, humans are extremely resourceful. We will solve all the problems. If you look at the pandemic and the mRNA vaccines, that's incredibly awesome. We are so lucky that mRNA vaccines existed. It was a multi-decade slog to get these out the door, but it eventually happened. And when it was ready for prime time, we put it to use. So I am very optimistic that humans can and will solve all the problems. But in the interim, there could be a lot of chaos and calamity, and you need to, of course, protect yourself. Now, the best way to protect yourself is to obviously learn to code. And the reason why I say that is that technology is not going anywhere. In fact, we're going to be more technologically dependent in the future. I do not see that trend going anywhere. So no matter what happens, technology will be more prevalent in the future. Now the thing about technology is that it changes. When I first started Mammoth Interactive, it was iPhone apps. Now it's more about Python and cybersecurity. And in the future, it's definitely going to be about machine learning, vision, and robotics. I cannot wait to buy a robot that will wash my car for me or clean my house. Now I know there's a Roomba that exists, but eventually it will happen. So in conclusion, inflation is probably not going to be transitory, and we know that from what these two stories tell us, the Palantir gold purchasing and the Toyota chip shortage. All right, so that concludes this video. I want to know your comments down below. Is inflation going to be a thing? How are you protecting yourself? Please write the comments down below. Remember that this channel doesn't do a Patreon, instead we sell our digital products down below. The more you get from the content that you buy below, the more content on this channel you can make. If you really like this channel, you can subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. We release 20 to 60 hours of fresh new content per month every single month. Our goal is to get to 10,000 paid subscribers on Mammoth Interactive. If we can do that, we can release 200 to 300 hours of content per month every single month. Not only that, we can make some amazing edtech solutions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.